You were in the middle of an important conversation. It could have been with your boss, partner, family member, or someone you respect. Then came a question that seemed simple, but made you feel cornered before you even spoke. It wasn't the answer that was missing, but the space to give the answer you wanted. Anything you said would sound wrong. Any choice seemed like a confession. While you tried to find a way out, the other person waited, looking like they already knew your answer. Once you see it, you can't unsee it, around you and within you. Let's start with a simple example. I'll ask you a question. Pay attention not to your answer, but to how you feel when you hear it. Do you still have that habit of stealing your colleague's pen? Did you notice what happened? If you answer yes, you admit to stealing pens. If no, you admit you used to steal but stopped. And if you've never stolen anything, it doesn't matter. The question already decided you're guilty before you spoke. You were judged, condemned, and sentenced without a chance to speak. This is the power of a poorly used closed question, or very well used, depending on which side you're on. In the next few minutes, you'll learn to identify this pattern, understand where it appears daily, and, most importantly, how to escape these traps with dignity and clarity without shouting or apologizing. Before discussing manipulation, let's cover the basics. Without understanding this distinction, you'll keep falling into traps, sometimes without knowing you're creating them for others. There are two fundamental types of questions, open and closed. A closed question limits the answer to a small set of options, usually yes or no. Did you like the movie? Are you going or not? Do you prefer coffee or tea? Closed questions are useful for quick decisions when the context is simple. There's nothing wrong with closed questions themselves. The problem starts when they're used in contexts requiring complexity and emotional honesty, or worse, to corner someone. An open question is different. It invites the person to think, elaborate, and express what they're feeling in their own terms. It doesn't have a predefined right or wrong answer. It genuinely opens space. What did you think of the movie? How are you feeling about this? What led you to make that decision? Do you see the difference? The open question didn't come with an answer in its pocket. It genuinely wants to know, on the terms of the one answering, not the one asking. When closed questions are used in situations that call for openness, they try to control the narrative, consciously or not. Closed questions become manipulative when they carry a premise the person never agreed to, forcing them to accept it by trying to answer. This is a loaded question, one of the oldest rhetorical tools used in courts, politics, public debates, and almost all close relationships at some point. A loaded question is constructed so any answer confirms a premise placed there stealthily. Let's see this in action. Pay attention to what happens inside you when you read each one. In relationships, do you love me or prefer to stay on your phone? The premise, using the phone is the opposite of loving. The question doesn't allow for, I love you, and also need moments of silence. At work, don't you think your performance this month was lacking? The premise, your performance was lacking. If you disagree, it seems like you lack self-criticism. If you agree, you accept an evaluation that might be unfair. In the family, are you still as irresponsible as before? The premise, you have always been irresponsible. The only question is whether you still are. In politics and media, will candidate X continue destroying the economy or change their attitude? The premise, candidate X is destroying the economy. The only discussion is about the future. In school and parenting, why do you always cause trouble in class? The premise, you always cause trouble. There's no room for today was unusual or I got involved but didn't start it. In all these cases, the person answering plays by the rules of the one asking, accepting rules written against them. But the trap closes regardless of intention. Intention doesn't cancel effect. The box closes. The person feels cornered. The damage is real. Now that you know what it is and how it works, let's map where this pattern appears more frequently. It's in more places than you imagine, and in some, you frequent daily without realizing it. In effective relationships, loaded questions cause deep damage because the context is one of trust. Manipulation within trust hurts differently. If you loved me, you wouldn't do this is a closed question disguised as a statement. Over time, those in such relationships start doubting their perception, wondering if they're exaggerating or the problem. This is called gaslighting, and loaded questions are one of its tools. In the workplace, leaders using manipulative questions create teams afraid to speak, preferring silence to traps. Don't you think you should work more? Is a disguised order, transferring the decision's weight to the employee while removing the leader's responsibility. In courts and interrogations, closed questions are used strategically. Were you or were you not at the scene on the day of the crime? Ignores complexity. Was there but arrived after? Was there but had no visibility? None of this fits into yes or no. In politics and media, the impact is broader. A question asked to millions carries a narrative that enters the viewer's mind as an established premise. Repeatedly hearing this type of formulation makes people stop questioning the premise. This is called propaganda. In parenting, children questioned with loaded questions learn their answers don't matter. They learn to be silent, to agree by reflex, not to develop their thinking because it was never welcome. Sometimes an adult's difficulty in taking a stand begins with questions asked when they were too young to contest. Now the most important part, what to do when one of these questions comes to you. The first thing to understand is you're not obliged to play by the question's rules. The trap only closes if you accept its premises. If you refuse them, with clarity, calm, without aggression, the trap doesn't close. Strategy 1. Name the premise. Bring the hidden premise to the surface. Are you still as irresponsible as before? You respond. This question assumes I was irresponsible. I don't agree with that premise. Can you tell me what led you to that conclusion? You questioned its basis, returning the conversation to fairer ground. Strategy 2. Refuse the binary choice. When the question offers only two paths, refuse both and offer a third. Do you love me or prefer to stay on your phone? You respond, that's not the real choice. I love you and also need rest and silence. These coexist. Strategy 3. Ask for reformulation. Ask the person to rephrase the question. Your question doesn't give me space to answer what I feel. Can you ask me in another way? This educates the one asking without creating conflict. Strategy 4. Respond with an open question. Return with an open question that changes the tone. Don't you think you should work more? You respond. What makes you feel my dedication isn't enough? The conversation moves from accusation to understanding. You don't have to answer the question asked. You can answer the question that should have been asked. So far, we've talked about defense. But let's go beyond. This video isn't just about survival. It's about transforming how you relate. Many use loaded questions without intending to manipulate. It's a habit, a communication pattern absorbed over years. If you learn to ask genuinely open questions, you'll transform your conversations, relationships, leadership, and presence as a parent, partner, friend, or colleague. Open questions usually start with, what do you think about? How do you feel about? What led you to? In what way do you see? What did it mean to you when? Instead of, did you like the meeting? Ask, what did you think of the meeting? What caught your attention? Instead of, are you okay? Ask, how are you really feeling today? Instead of, don't you think you should apologize? Ask, how do you think the other person felt about what happened? Open questions gather more information and demonstrate respect. They show you genuinely want to understand, not confirm what you already thought. This changes everything: relationships, teams, families. A person who learns to ask open questions becomes a more effective leader, secure partner, and rare friend. Not because they learn to be nice, but because they learn to truly listen. Truly listening is rare and valuable in an era of constant noise. You've made it this far. From now on, you'll hear questions differently. You'll notice hidden premises before answering. You'll feel when a question tries to box you in. You'll have the tools to get out, with clarity and firmness, without shouting or apologizing. But pay attention to the questions you ask yourself, your children, partner, colleagues, and yourself in internal conversations. How often have you entered a conversation with the answer you wanted to hear and built the question around it? How often have you asked a question that seemed to want to understand, but actually wanted to confirm a narrative you already had? There's no judgment here. Everyone does this. The brain hates uncertainty and loves to confirm what it believes. But now you know, you have a choice. The choice to ask to close or ask to open. Questions that close build walls. Questions that open build bridges. The right question changes everything. Here we learn to ask the questions that set us free.